Growing up is a real adventure. Learning how to get by in life can be fun, but it can also prove testing. Danger is never far away, and bad decisions could land you in a whole heap of trouble. However, with a little help from Mum and Dad, childhood can be an exciting time, as every day brings a new lesson for animals growing up wild. For some animals, growing up is a lonely business. They are abandoned as soon as they're born, relying entirely on their instincts to survive. From the very beginning of life, they're left to grow up alone and have to fend for themselves. But many animals do benefit from a little help from their parents. And in the early days of life, they are often completely reliant on them. In this Indian forest, a new life is exploring the world for the first time. A precious tiger cub. It's just 10 days old. Most cubs will stay in their dens for the first 6 weeks, but this one is clearly adventurous. Although the cub's eyes are open, it'll be a few weeks before it can see properly. It's completely helpless. There are 4 new cubs in all, and they're quite lively. In these early days, they're dependent on their mother for everything, but right now, they're not making her life easy. It's enough to test any parent's patience. Tiger cubs stay with their mother until they're about 2 years old. But typically, only half will make it to maturity. There's no doubt these youngsters face a bumpy journey to adulthood. The first steps of growing up are often some of the most precarious in any animal's life. For some, they are literally a leap of faith. It's spring in the forests of Eastern Europe, and safe within the hollow of a tree, a female mandarin duck is about to teach her one-day-old ducklings how to leave their nest. She leads the way. The ducklings are imprinted on their mother, which means they are pre-programmed to follow her. However, it's a long drop, and a few calls of encouragement are needed. have landed safely, but there are more left to jump. At least it's a soft landing. Off we go! Deep breath. Geronimo! The final pair take to the air. Made it. But their escapade isn't over. They must now reach water. The nearest pool is almost a mile away. Quite a trek for the youngsters. By following their mother's lead, these ducklings have passed their first test. Now, on water, they will spend their time learning what's good to eat and exploring their new watery world. Wherever your home is, taking your first big steps in life can be quite an undertaking. But for some, the challenge is far greater than others. Nevertheless, it's something they must get right. Here in Israel, those first steps don't get much more difficult. Up here, your footing needs to be firm, and a head for heights is essential. Meet the ibex. They have made these treacherous cliffs their own. But for these newborn youngsters, this rocky wilderness makes for a nerve-wracking nursery. They spend the first few days of their life at the highest level, relatively safe from predators who can't scale such heady heights. However, at only a few days old, they have to leave their playtime plateaus. For the first time, they must attempt to climb down these terrifying precipices to find food. It's a daunting prospect, certainly not for the faint-hearted. Their mother leads the way. The kids are understandably tentative. They must slowly pick their way down the sheer rock faces. Their mother shows them the best route. She has done it hundreds of times before. But for the kids, this is new territory. Gradually, they start to get the hang of it, but they need to focus, as one slip could be their last. Finally, they've made it. There's a whole new world at the lower levels, with plenty of food and water. Here, the parents show off their balancing skills as they all browse together. But one kid has been left behind, and she's in trouble. A fox, and it spotted the straggler. The young ibex runs as fast as it can back up the cliff, but the fox is right on its heels. It'll be hoping for a quick kill. As the kid heads back up the cliff, the fox tries to gain the higher ground. But the kid has scrambled onto a rock face. It's so steep that only it could possibly stand there without toppling off. The fox has no choice but to give up. It doesn't stand a chance on this precipice. The lessons learned on this morning's descent have saved the kid's life. And, despite still being so young, it has outwitted one of the canniest of predators. Conquering your terrain is a crucial part of growing up, but for some animals, it can also be a race against time. Here in the African Congo, a colony of skimmers, so called for their special feeding technique, have made these sandbanks their home. But it won't be forever, as before long the waters here will rise, and they will have to move on. These young skimmers were born here and are only a few weeks old. Before the waters rise, they need to learn to fly and how to catch fish, and they need to learn both skills quickly. They watch as the adults gracefully skim the water. An adult skimmer has a beak with the lower part longer than the upper. With this, they can slice through the water at 10 meters a second. If their beak hits something, it will snap shut. It's a clever technique for catching fish. The problem for youngsters is that they have to wait for the lower part of their beak to completely grow. In the meantime, while the water is shallow and they have the sand to run on, they do their best to learn the skimming technique. It's not as easy as it looks. But they need to perfect the skill as it's vital to their survival. The clock is ticking. Soon all the sand they are using as a practice ground will be gone. The annual storms in the African Congo have arrived. Very soon these nursery sand flats will be under several meters of water. The skimmers have to move out. With their home disappearing, the time has come for the young skimmers to take to the air with the rest of the colony. Practice time is over. How well they've mastered the art of skimming will affect the future success of their adult life. The amount of time animals are with their parents varies greatly, and for some, childhood can be leisurely. They spend much of their time playing. It might only seem like a bit of fun, but it's essential to a young animal's development. It helps with their strength, coordination, and social skills. Playing is a crucial part of learning, and the games can be a rehearsal for adult life. Six months later in India, and the tiger cubs are putting their play into practice and trying to hunt. They must closely follow their mother as she slowly creeps through the forest. It's all about stealth. Patience and timing are crucial. The moment to pounce has to be exactly right. but one of the cubs just can't keep his excitement to himself. Mum isn't too impressed. She'll have to start all over again. The tiger cubs still have a lot to learn. Always paying attention to your parents and following their lead can sometimes be trying. Summer in the Arctic, and the frozen surface of the ocean is beginning to disintegrate. These two polar bear cubs are 6 months old. It's the first time they've seen the ice break up, and they're about to get a swimming lesson. They're not too sure about making the plunge. For their mother, swimming is second nature, but the cubs still prefer to have ice beneath their feet whenever they can. Soon it will be impossible to avoid the water, so swimming isn't extracurricular, it's crucial. The cubs will stay with their mother for another 2 years. Not until then will they be ready to leave her side. For some animals, learning from their parents can take years. Apart from humans, it is the orangutan which has the longest of all primate childhoods. This female orang is 42 years old. Her daughter is 6 and will stay with her for at least another 2 years. But then there is much you must understand in the treetop world of Sumatra. She has to learn to collect ants and termites. She will need to identify at least 300 edible plants and avoid the poisonous ones. Judging when fruit is ripe is essential. The young orang must also be able to judge which branches can carry her weight and which insect nests are safe to raid. Building up a guide to the foods of the rainforest is a long and complex process. but it's vital training for the future. When her education is complete, this young orang will leave her mother, and eventually she will pass on this in-depth knowledge to her own offspring. It's clear that your mother's example has a huge impact on your chance of survival. In many cases, she is your sole teacher when growing up. However, there are times when following your mum can lead you into trouble. A fast-flowing river in Kenya, full of strong currents, as well as crocodiles. Despite the dangers, this herd of elephants has to get across. The matriarch of a group leads some youngsters into the river. She knows that to reach the other side, she has to head slightly upstream into the current. Watching from the shallows is a younger group. These small calves have mothers who are far less experienced. They watch the older matriarch reach the other side safely. Then it's their turn to brave the river. They are almost immediately in trouble, but in too deep to get back. If the youngsters become separated, they will easily drown. One has been overcome and is being swept downstream. The mothers try to keep hold of the young ones, but they can't contain all three. As they save one, the others get washed away. The currents are even too strong for the mothers, and they have no choice but to let their babies go. baby manages to clamber out, but the other two are still struggling. The mothers come to help, but they have no way to lift them out. The babies are weak and terrified. Eventually, they manage to get out. It's a massive relief. What started as a lesson in life turned into a nightmare. Growing up can be hard, even with your parents there to guide you, particularly when they start dishing out the tough love. This barren, icy landscape is Antarctica, one of the harshest places to grow up wild. Winter is only a few weeks away, and young Adelie penguins need to quickly get stronger before the storms arrive. The chicks are only 3 weeks old. Their downy coats aren't fully waterproof, so they cluster together for warmth. It's essential the young stay in creches like this, as most of the adults have gone away. They have left their offspring on land as they go out to sea fishing, sometimes for days at a time. When the parents return, serving dinner becomes a competitive business. Both these youngsters are ravenously hungry, but before they can eat, they have to catch their mother. It's a demanding test for the siblings. Just staying on 2 feet can be a challenge. The race for supper is proving too hard for one of the chicks. It just can't keep up. Sadly, there will be no food for him today. The winner's reward is some tasty fish. It may seem cruel, but with life so harsh here, parents need to know which chick is stronger and more likely to survive childhood. The lessons dealt out by adults can be particularly tough, and sometimes they're not always from their own parents. These toque macaques in Sri Lanka live in large troops. It's a very complex social structure with a strict hierarchy. If they're to make it through childhood, youngsters must fit in, and discipline is fiercely maintained. All young macaques are low-ranking, and they have to quickly learn how to show respect through a variety of gestures and facial expressions. Adults don't hesitate to show who's in charge. This infant female is considered to be the lowest of the low, and she won't survive long if she doesn't learn the social conventions. The dominant male is the overall boss, and he demands respect from everyone, no matter how young. He won't tolerate any sign of insubordination. If he looks another macaque in the eye, they have to express submission by chattering their teeth. The tiny female has caught his eye, but does she know what sound to make? If she gets it wrong, the punishment will be harsh. She just about manages to chatter her teeth, and just in time. There'll be many more tests in this young macaque's life, but at least she's passed her first. Getting through the early stages of childhood can certainly be daunting. As animals get older, their chances of survival inevitably increase. But different issues have to be confronted. Just like humans, the teenage years can prove troublesome. It's a time when boundaries are tested and tempers can fray. Mistakes are made, and some can be painful. Full of testosterone, young males all want to be the big guy. They aren't always ready for independence, but act like they are. Being a teenager is never without its challenges. Here in the forests of Uganda is a family of gorillas. Gorillas live in complex social groups, which aren't always the easiest to grow up in. They usually form small groups with one dominant male silverback, several females, and their offspring. This young teenage male is at a crossroads in his life. He enjoys the security of his family, but within the group, his future is limited. The dominant silverback is in charge, and only he is allowed to mate with the females in the group. Full of hormones, it's not easy for the adolescent gorilla. If he wants a family of his own, he will either have to leave the group to set up his own, or overthrow the lead silverback. He's been trying to prove his strength within the group. He spots a younger male and tries to assert his dominance. He places himself between the smaller male and the rest of the family to show who is boss. But taking on such small fry isn't enough to impress. To challenge the dominant silverback would be a whole different story. His only other option is to leave home. It's not an easy decision to make. In India, the tigers are also now teenagers, but they seem to be having more fun. Play is still a big part of their day, but the rough and tumble has turned into more aggressive play fighting. The sparring is good practice for when they leave home and may need to fend off other tigers. For now, though, they keep their claws in. No hard feelings here. To be independent, they also need to learn to hunt their own prey, but this is proving more difficult. One of the males quietly creeps up on a deer. But he peeks too soon. His sister also misses her chance as the deer runs straight past her. He will just have to keep practicing. Of course, not all animals leave home. Some stay within their extended families. the size of the group can vary widely. Hippos, for example, can form small pods. Or come together in very large numbers. Many, like wolves, form groups or packs as a strategy for hunting and to give them safety in numbers. The animals within such communities, like these gelada baboons, are old enough to leave home, but the protection of their social group takes priority, and they are destined to stay. But even within such groups, there are individuals that are born to be different and are destined to leave their families. One of those can be found in the African desert. This little creature is a female naked mole rat. She has never ventured above ground before. She doesn't belong here. Nighttime in the desert can be a dangerous place. But tonight, she is risking her life in an attempt to fulfill her destiny. She has left the safety of her family to go in search of a mate. But, with danger everywhere, will she even survive the night? Naked mole rats are one of the planet's strangest mammals. Their home is a network of specially built tunnels under the ground. Communities with one dominant female and many so-called workers. Only the dominant female will reproduce. However, occasionally there is a chosen offspring, a princess, who will grow up pampered and not have to work. Instead, she reserves her energy for her big day when she will leave home to set up a brand new colony. But alone in the desert, this princess won't survive for long. Her search to find a partner is urgent. There's an enticing smell in the air. Finally, a seductive scent draws her down to safety. She's sniffed out a partner. He too is alone and eager to start a new family in his empty burrow. Two months later, and the princess has become a queen. She has had her first litter of babies and is now ready to start ruling over a new dynasty of naked mole rats. Only certain chosen individual mole rats will cut loose from their communities to start new families. But with some creatures, there can be a whole generation destined to leave home. One such species can also be found under the ground in the deserts of Arizona. For the first time for 6 years, a generation of honey ants has been born with wings. The rest of the colony are wingless, and they are all female. But these winged offspring include female and male ants. When the time is right, their wings will offer them the chance to leave home. This is what they were waiting for. The summer monsoon. These torrential downpours can produce several centimeters of rain in just a few hours. The rain will make the normally hard, dry ground soft, and that is when the winged ants will be ready to make their own way in the world. As the rains stop, the worker ants come out to prepare the nest hole, a launch pad for their special siblings. Their big moment has arrived. They come out into the light and get ready for takeoff. This is what they were born for. Hundreds of insects take to the air. From this colony and from many others. They frenetically seek each other out. They need to mate as quickly as possible. Then they will span out across the desert. Those that survive will get the chance to start their own colony. If you are destined to leave home and start your own family, knowing when to go isn't always an easy decision. The young male gorilla is spending more and more time alone. The rest of his troop have found a tasty feast of fungi. The dominant silverback always has priority and eats first. The children arrive and are allowed to share the fungi. But the young male is last in the pecking order. Even the babies can feed before him. disheartening. To make matters worse, the silverback flaunts his right to mate in front of him. Is it time for the teenage gorilla to make his own way in the world? The family set off together into the forest. If the young male goes with them, he will never have a family of his own, as he isn't strong enough to challenge the dominant silverback. He doesn't follow the family, but sets off in another direction. Leaving home could spell years of hardship living alone, but at least it offers him the chance of one day finding his own group and fulfilling his ultimate aim, that of becoming a dominant silverback. The tiger cubs are fully grown and almost ready to leave home. One of the females is hunting alone. She has perfected her stealth technique. She knows it's all about timing, and she has learned the art of patience. Success. It's only a fawn, but it's a start. It's too small to share with her siblings, and she makes that quite clear. After 2 years of living and learning together, these tigers no longer need their mother or each other. They have already begun to carve out their own territories and are ready to live life alone. Growing up wild is not an easy business. There are many trials and tribulations along the way. It can be a long, hard journey, even with the support of your parents. But childhood is also exciting as animals discover their world for the first time. And for those who do make the grade, a new adventure is just beginning as they start their adult life.
Coming up on BBC Two, Kitty McVitie will pay dearly for finding the blacksmith. Banished is next. Then Pemberton and Shearsmith return with a brand new series of the award-winning Inside Number 9 at 10. And on BBC 4, crossing the Pakistan